Uh, Good evening, sir, and hello, everybody. Can you
Yes,
can you
yes,
hear me?
we hear you very well and we can see your slide.
So, long-term durability of transcatheter aortic valve replacement mechanism and predictors of deterioration. So, I think that is a very important concept which we need to understand because we saw some really exciting cases which were shown by Dr. Nagendra Chauhan and everybody. But you see, the age was 60, 65, 63, and if we start doing TAVRs in young age, we need to understand that how long these valves will last, or what are the predictors. Is there a hemodynamic predictor which will help us to optimize a patient's procedure, so that probably we might kind of prolong the valve durability. So let us try to understand this. So what are the causes of bioprosthetic valve dysfunction? So bioprosthetic valve dysfunction can be a structural valve deterioration, a non-structural valve deterioration, thrombosis, endocarditis. So a structural valve deterioration is intrinsic permanent changes of the prosthetic valve, which is calcification, leaflet fibrosis, tear or flail leaflet, leading to degeneration and hemodynamic dysfunction. Any abnormality, non-structural valve deterioration is something like a intravalvular leakage or paravalvular leakage or a patient process mismatch or a patient process or a prosthesis malposition. Thrombus development, I'll be discussing a little in next few slides. Bioprosthetic valve thrombosis, HALT and HAM, these are new terms which are utilized for evaluation of tissue valve. Endocarditis in transcatheter aortic valve increases the chances of prosthetic valve degeneration in the follow-up. So this is a very busy slide. I have taken this from the ESC guidelines. Well, the problem earlier was there was no standard definition of a surgical tissue valve degeneration. So the different definitions were used in different studies, and that is why the data was not very concordant across all the trials. But this is the current definition which should be utilized if you are defining a patient with structural valve degeneration. And I'm going to read something, some of those important ones, which is SVD stage 2S, which is moderate stenosis, SVG stage 2R, which is moderate regurgitation. So what is moderate stenosis? Mean transprosthetic gradient of more than 20 but less than 40 millimeters of mercury, or mean transprosthetic gradient more than 10 and less than 20, change from baseline with decrease in effective orifice area and DVI. So if the main gradient increases by 10 millimeters of mercury from the baseline is post-procedure, before the patient goes home or at 1 month follow-up, then you suspect a structural valve degeneration stage 2S, which is moderate stenosis. Then subsequently 2R is moderate regurgitation, stage 3 is severe stenosis and regurgitation. So again, a busy slide, but we need to understand leaflet degeneration, endocarditis, bioprosthetic valve thrombosis, paravalvular leak. All these things, they contribute to the early degeneration of a tissue valve. So few important points here. The incidence of infective endocarditis is 0.5 to 3.4% after TAVR and 1 to 6% after surgical aortic valve replacement. From study of 4,000 TAVI patients, out of 4,000, 29 developed infective endocarditis, and the most common organism was staph, enterococci, and streptococci. The problem is when elderly patients develop endocarditis, the clinical findings are not very typical and sometimes it can be missed. But if you have a patient on follow-up and patient develops a new valvular regurgitation, there is a high chance that this patient is having infective endocarditis. Bioprosthetic valve thrombosis, again, can be classified into two things. One is symptomatic and one is asymptomatic. So symptomatic obstructive valve thrombosis is seen in 0.5% of TAVI patients, and asymptomatic is seen in 5 to 40% of TAVI patients. What is the mechanism of valve degeneration? There's a mechanical stress and abnormal flow at the level of leaflets. This leads to tissue disruption, thickening, collagen fiber disruptions, and this leads to tissue calcification. What are the potential factors in bioprosthesis degeneration? There's TAVI procedure-specific factors, patient-related factors, then bioprosthesis-related factors. So what is procedure-related factors? Leaflet injury due to crimping, loading, post-dilatation, abnormal trans or paravalvular flow patterns, which can be present in bicuspid aortic stenosis or a patient who has a heavily calcified leaflets, because now the leaflets are pushed to the sinuses and there is a dead space, different type of vortex currents, and this might create some sort of stress on the leaflets. Then the non-circular or irregular or incomplete stent deployment, which is again seen in patients who have heavily calcified anatomies and also heavily calcified left ventricular outflow tract. So, and this can also result from an excessive oversizing of a valve. Now, suppose your valve is 20-25% oversized, the valve leaflets will be crowded, though the valve leaflets are supraannular, but there is no definitive evidence as of now, but this is a theory that this might lead to early valve degeneration in future. What are patient-related factors? Dyslipidemia, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, dysregulation of phosphocalcific metabolism, immune rejection, hypertension, bioprocess-related factors, absence of anti-mineralization treatment, which is not there. At present, all TAVR valves have anti-calcification treatment, flaws in bioprocesses design, then severe patient-process mismatch. So this is important. When you select a valve in such a way that patient does not have a process mismatch. You do a procedure in such a way that there is no paravalvular leakage, because paravalvular leakage itself will increase the stress on the leaflets and which can lead to early degeneration. These are the risk factors, mechanism, and clinical consequences of a bioprosthetic valve deterioration. So normal bioprosthetic valve has a stent or a strut, which is applicable for both self-expanding and a balloon expandable valve. There is a valve leaflet. And what happens once the valve is implanted? There's aortic sinus, and inside the sinus are the displaced coronary leaflets. So all these areas, they can have different type of shear stress on the TAVR leaflets. Then patient-related factors, which we already discussed, all these things, they can lead to disruption of the valve leaflets from the frame, or a stent frame fracture, or a leaflet calcification, and they can lead to structural valve deterioration. This is a slide which I have taken from a study which was presented at ACC, long-term durability of transcatheter aortic valve replacement, and systematic review of 5-year valve durability and beyond. So if you see the incidence of valve degeneration in patients below 3 years is 1%, 3 to 5 years is 2.27%, and after 5 years it is 6.29% and increasing. What is bioprosthetic valve thrombosis? There are two terms. One is HALT and HAM. HALT is hypoattenuated leaflet thickening, and HAM is abnormal mobility. So on the left side is a clinical valve thrombosis. So this patient is symptomatic, and you can see the presence of thrombus on the leaflets. These are not my slides. I borrowed it from a paper published in JACC. I'm yet to see a valve thrombosis on the aortic leaflets, but I have seen a valve thrombosis of the TMVR valve in valve, where I had to thrombolize a patient. On the right side is the subclinical leaflet thrombosis, which is more of a radiological finding by using a 4D CT, and it is and there is thickening of the leaflets which is seen, and this is subclinical leaflet thrombosis, and this leaf thickening goes away after 12 weeks of anticoagulation therapy. Clinical presentations of a symptomatic thrombosis would be dyspnea, heart failure, TIA, stroke, or peripheral embolism. Subclinical leaflet thrombosis would be asymptomatic. This is usually picked up on a routine screening. A patient comes to you and now you notice an increase in the gradients from baseline, but patient is not symptomatic. You can order a 4D CT scan which will show leaflet thickening and leaflet motion impairment. So the first one is HALT, and the second one where the motion is impaired is HAM. Treatment is oral anticoagulation. We would still use vitamin K antagonist and not NOACs in these patients. But if patient has severe thrombosis, has NYHA class 3 to 4 symptoms and has clinical valve thrombosis, probably a redo AVR or a valve-in-valve TAVI can be attempted in this patient. This is again a busy slide which shows the incidence of subclinical leaflet thrombosis. So if you see the first one, TAVR, HAM is abnormal motion, was seen in 40% of the cases. In the Hansen et al., HALT, leaflet thickening, was seen in 7% of the cases. But if you see the clinical outcome, in the first one, which was by Dr. Raj Makkar et al., the HAM was seen in 40%, but there was no significant difference in TIA, stroke, and death. compared to patients who did not have a ham. And I think this is the data from the first in man Portico trial, where the trial was stopped and then reintroduced again. So similarly, in other trials, again, halt and ham, the incidence varies from 4 to almost 40%. So my aim is to highlight that this halt and ham is also seen in surgical tissue valves. And if you have an increased gradients on follow-up, it is better to put this patient on anticoagulation for at least 12 weeks. What about surgical valve?
So Ravinder, you have a minute more.
Okay. So what I'll do, I'll come. So I think, okay. So does structural valve degeneration increases the risk of thromboembolic incidents? So this is a data which was published recently in JACC, where they saw that patients who have increase in mean gradients of more than 10 millimeters of mercury, there's an increased incidence of TIA. And this is very important for us to understand that if we have a TAVR patient on follow-up and this patient develops some sort of TIA or thromboembolic manifestation, I think we should get a 4D CT scan done for these patients and put them on anticoagulation. This is the data of comparing TAVR and surgical aortic valve replacement from PARTNER 1 trial of almost 5-year follow-up. So you see the TAVR valve hemodynamics are comparable to the surgical aortic valve hemodynamics, and there is no indication that there is early degeneration of a TAVR valve. So the management of a structural valve degeneration, if there is paravalvular leak, you close the paravalvular leak or do a redo TAVI. If patient has intraprostatic regurgitation, exclude THV endocarditis. If there's a positive blood culture, you treat with an antibiotic therapy. If it is not effective, then a surgical valve replacement would be better compared to a transcatheter aortic valve. The reason is there is increased incidence of infective endocarditis on a tissue valve. So if I have a TAVI patient who develops infective endocarditis, I would take help of my surgeon. If the patient is intermediate risk for surgery, he should go for surgery. Conclusion. At present, the TAVR valve durability is equivalent to surgical aortic valve replacement in high-risk elderly patients. This is very important. Remember, the data is from PARTNER 1 trial. The current data is based on the valves which are no longer used. So this data is from SAPIEN XT or a core valve. Remember, those valves had no outer skirt and there was high incidence of paravalvular leak, and still the durability of the TAVR valve was equivalent to a surgical valve at 6 to 8 years of follow-up. Long-term durability will be answered by patients followed in low-risk trial. However, on our part, what we can do is procedure optimization with no PVL, proper valve selection, avoiding a patient process mismatch, and maybe using an oral anticoagulation for 3 months in younger patients and for a valve-in-valve patients or a bicuspid anatomy might be helpful. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you summed it up extremely well, Ravinder. This is a great presentation. I must tell you, it was a great presentation. I just wish we had more time to go through every aspect, because this is one of the critiques which keeps coming up, and I think you were really addressing it very soundly. I think we need to move on, and we'll go on to Dr. Sushil Kodali regarding the risk of stroke during TAVR and how to prevent it. Sushil, over to you.